There are stories that shake you to your core. Not because they happened far away in some war-torn land or in a moment of global catastrophe, but because they happened right next door. Because they happened in silence. Because they were preventable. This is the story of a little girl named Caasi, a child whose cries were ignored, whose bruises were excused, and whose life was shattered by the very people who were supposed to protect her. This isn't just a story of abuse. It's a story of every failure, every ignored warning, every door that stayed closed when it should have been kicked down. Caasi lived in Fresno, California. On the outside, her life was invisible, just another apartment, another name. But behind those walls, something horrifying was unfolding. Her mother, Raquel Clifton, and her boyfriend, Armando Gonzalez, created a world of chaos, fear, and violence. Caasi was just 7 years old. She should have been chasing butterflies in the park, not locked away from birthday parties, sleepovers, or sunshine. She should have been learning how to ride a bike, not hiding in closets and sleeping on the floor. Raquel didn't like visitors. She avoided surprise check-ins. If someone knocked, she wouldn't answer. People started noticing that Caasi was disappearing. Not physically, but emotionally. She stopped smiling at family events. She drifted into silence. Her once bright light dimmed, and yet no one got to her in time. Family whispered stories, rumors of closets, screaming, bruises, but they had no proof. And when anyone tried to ask questions, Raquel would bite back with venom. Mind your business. And so they did. Meanwhile, meth took hold of the home. Raquel and Armando became paranoid, unstable, and violent. The apartment became a prison for Caasi, a place of constant strangers, loud fights, broken glass, and shattered innocence. It wasn't a home, it was a battlefield. Teachers noticed, neighbors heard, doctors recorded. Everyone had pieces of the puzzle, but no one put it together. Caasi's teachers saw her fall behind in school. Her work slipped, her body shrank, her eyes darkened. When they asked what was wrong, she gave memorized lines. I fell. I bumped into something. Her answers were rehearsed, robotic, and heartbreaking. The school nurse documented bruises. A pediatrician noted injuries in various stages of healing, wounds that couldn't be explained by a child's clumsiness. They reported it to Child Protective Services. But the system, bloated with red tape and starved of urgency, didn't move fast enough. Reports piled up. Cases got lost. Home visits were delayed. When they finally happened, Raquel knew how to stage the perfect lie. She cleaned, she coached, and the truth stayed buried. The system meant to protect Caasi was broken. Social workers were overwhelmed. One admitted they had over 30 children to monitor, double the national recommendation. Some children were sleeping on yoga mats in office buildings, without food or showers. Good workers burned out. Experienced ones quit. In 4 years, the Fresno Child Welfare Department had a turnover rate of 107%. That's not just a number. That's abandonment in plain sight. So even when family members reported concerns, even when neighbors mentioned the screaming, even when doctors warned about the bruises, it all ended the same way. Nothing happened. Until it was too late. On a cold November night in 2022, paramedics rushed a young girl into Fresno's Community Regional Medical Center. She was unconscious. Her body told a story that no child should ever live through. Caasi was covered in bruises, burns, cuts, and fractures. Some old, some fresh. She was starving. She was broken. She was barely alive. The trauma team, seasoned and trained, were still shaken by what they saw. This wasn't one moment of violence. This was a lifetime of pain. The moment doctors laid eyes on her, they knew something was terribly wrong. They called the police immediately, and that call finally triggered what should have happened years ago: an investigation. Detectives from the Fresno Police Department arrived within hours. Interviews began. Neighbors admitted they'd heard the violence but didn't know what to do. Family members came forward, saying they tried to get custody but were stopped by legal hurdles and lack of proof. And then came Armando Gonzalez's record. A long history of abuse, threats, and violence. He had been arrested for assault, for putting children in danger. And yet, he was still in that apartment with Caasi. Raquel was no better. Her life was consumed by meth. She chose drugs over her own daughter. She defended a violent man. She silenced Caasi's cries with fear. She let it happen. When news of Caasi's abuse finally broke, it rocked the community. The city was furious. Child advocates demanded justice. Social media lit up with #JusticeForCaasi. People asked how this had been allowed to go on. How so many could see and still do nothing. How so many systems failed over and over again. Both Raquel and Armando were arrested. The charges were staggering. Child abuse, torture, neglect, sexual assault. They now sat in jail, waiting for trials that couldn't come soon enough. Their fate rested on the testimony of a girl who had been through more horror than most adults will ever know. Caasi's recovery was slow. She needed surgeries, physical therapy, and trauma counseling. But it wasn't just her bones that were broken. It was her soul, her trust, her sense of safety. Therapists worked day and night. But healing isn't quick, and it isn't guaranteed. Her biological father, Isaac Monia, came forward. He had been absent, but now he stood as Caasi's strongest voice. Outside the courthouse, he held a framed photo of her smiling, before the bruises, before the scars. His message was clear. This should have never happened. Not to Caasi, not to any child. He spoke not only for her but for every child suffering in silence. Every kid trapped in a home that feels like a war zone. Every whisper ignored by a broken system. He demanded answers. He demanded change. The legal case moved slowly, but it moved. Prosecutors promised to build the strongest case possible. Court documents painted a damning picture. Statements from doctors, police, therapists, and family, all saying the same thing. Caasi was crying out, and no one listened. And that's the lesson we're left with. This wasn't just about two monsters. This was about the cracks in every wall meant to protect the vulnerable. It was about the fear of speaking up, the hesitation to act, the bureaucracy that values paper trails over human lives, and the society that says it's not my business while a child wastes away behind closed doors. Caasi's name should be etched into the conscience of every policymaker, every caseworker, every neighbor, teacher, doctor, and stranger. Her suffering is a mirror. It shows us what happens when we look away. She is not just another case file. She is not just another headline. She is a call to action. Because the next Caasi might already be out there. Waiting, crying, bruised, and unheard. Let her be the last.